I'm excited today to be sharing with you one of my favorite topics because it can be a little edgy because sometimes I don't know what's going on with Facebook. It's the worst service recently. So if I'm just blurting in and out, it's not me. Anyway, talking about this topic of mental flexibility. And for those who lack mental flexibility, life can be a little stressful and you can be a little triggered by this topic. So, we're going to dig in to see what is mental flexibility, how is mental flexibility really uh, a way to prevent stress when we have this lack of flexibility. So, what am I getting a message about? Okay, all good. So, an important aspect of preventing stress is to remain flexible, right? We have to be adaptable. This is being adaptable is part of building our resilience. And being resilient is going to help minimize our stress. So there's many ways to do that, and I've been sharing some of those in these lives that I've been doing over the last week or so. I think this is number 7, and I'll be doing them until the end of the month. It's the so I think we have another week or so. So come back and plug into the ones that you think are relevant to you. I'm giving you some tools and some strategies on how to deal with some of these things that are common stressors. Not necessarily all the kind of typical things that people talk about around stress management. So we're in the midst of COVID-19. We're in isolation. People are on lockdown for the most part. But yet people are still working, so that can be a stressor. And then there's those who aren't working, and that can be a stressor. And then there's those that have mental inflexibility, and that's a stressor. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because I am seeing this right now in our society at large. And as someone brought up to me today, we were talking about just not even really talking about because I can't even give this my attention, but just mentioned about protest. And there's lots of reasons why people protest, right? And some of this shows up because of lack of mental flexibility. And because when we have this where we see things black and white or right or wrong. And I remember, and I used to be one of these people, so I know this really well. So I can speak around anybody with this because in the value system that I grew up in, there was right or wrong. Things were black and white. And there was a lot of mental inflexibility on my part because I had adapted those value systems and those beliefs until I had an awakening, thank God. So when though we have this mental inflexibility, we can feel stuck. And when we feel stuck, we feel stressed. So, as I was saying, it's important to have this adaptability to help weather the storms, and this shows up in a lot of different ways. So, this could show up in relationships of any kind: parent-child, siblings. God knows among siblings, right? With any family members, with whoever's living in your household, right? We all have a way of seeing things. We have a way of doing things. We have a way of believing how things should be done or the way they should look. And when we're not flexible, it causes conflict. And conflict causes stress, a lot of stress. So having this ability to be open to a new perspective, accepting that maybe things could be done another way, achieving something differently, being overly principled. I remember, it's not even that long ago. I mean, it was a long time ago, but not really that long ago. When I think about how much I've loosened up around this, and but I had taken this job that I interviewed for. They did this personality test, and I have no clue which one it was, but the owner of the company came back to me and said, "No, I'm not hiring you." I was already working for the company, and I'm not hiring you for that for that management job because you're too principled. And I was like, "What does that even mean?" And what he was saying was that the test showed that I do not have the ability, essentially, to be flexible enough to work with a team that might have different points of view, or that I was too principled in because it was working with a sales team, and that maybe I was too principled that it would be hard for me to be successful in sales. And so the irony of that is, first, I did get the job because I've been in sales my entire life, so I knew how to sell him on hiring me. So that was kind of the irony of the whole thing. But nonetheless, it was an insight that I greatly appreciated. I have no idea what the questions were and how the algorithms were with the results of that. But it made me be really reflective about where did that show up? How did I answer those questions? Where is this showing up in my life that and I don't want to say I come across that way. I answered questions on a test that way that may or may not have even been true, right? Or real in the way that I answered them, because chances are the way I take tests, I wasn't even reading the question and just answered something. So nonetheless, though, when we're overly principled, when we have these rigid points of view, then it causes stress because it strains our relationships. It makes it difficult to get along with others. It makes it difficult to get work done because we're not able to collaborate and cooperate because of our lack of being able to see things in another way. So how do you know if you lack this mental flexibility? Because the funny thing is, those who lack the mental flexibility don't even generally accept the fact that they're rigid and that they lack this mental flexibility because they're so principled, because they know they're right, because it's based on their values and the things that they believe in are true and correct. So it's not mental inflexibility. It's taking a stand for what they know to be true. So still mental inflexibility, just let you know. So anyway, so with that, how do you know if this is you or not? So one of the check-ins, if you will. So, I mean, it's so easy. I love this stuff, like the psychological aspects of human beings and behavior is just so fascinating to me. It's why I became a coach. It's why my whole life has been fascinated by human beings, because when we just observe body language and when we just listen to the words that people use, and I'm the first one to always say, words have meaning, and they do, and sometimes they have a number of meanings. And so how do we interpret that, right? So, and we see that often, right, in the way that we communicate with technology, right? On our phones or in an email, you don't hear the person. You're not seeing their body language. So it can be easy to misunderstand what a word meant, right? Especially without a comma. Somebody messaged me yesterday, and my response was, what in the world does that even mean? And they wrote back and went, I forgot to put the comma. I'm like, oh, okay. So reading it with the comma in the right place makes total sense now. So punctuation matters. Words matter. With that, the words that someone who has a rigid mindset, a rigid point of view, will use words in their language like always, everyone, should, must. So there's these words of absoluteness, right? So when you're talking to someone and they're like, they, who is they? I read an article yesterday with some controversy about COVID-19 and the population that in our area that has kind of taken on the largest percentage of diagnosed cases. And criticizing others in the community. The article was someone rebutting to someone else that had criticized this population in the community, and yet the person who is saying, we're not accepted and we always get criticized and all that, kept saying they and the community. I'm reading this saying you're legitimately doing the same exact thing that you're criticizing. How can it be? The entire community sees it this way. That is rigid thinking. And what comes with rigid thinking is that it produces prejudices and judgments, and you can hear it in anyone's language who is rigid thinking. They will classify a certain group of people or a certain behavior or a certain anything as everything, everyone, they, always, all of that kind of stuff. So know what you're dealing with when you have someone like that, because arguments will ensue. They will be difficult to be on a team and to get along with everyone. So, okay. So here's the thing. When we have rigid thinking, which we know produces stress because it stresses it creates a strain in our relationships. It causes us to have different feelings about our way we see ourselves and the way we see others. Here's the thing. Rigid thinking produces rigid language, which I just mentioned. And how we think produces how we feel, and then how we feel is how we act. And that becomes a big problem for the rigid thinker, because now you're projecting out all of this in the way that you act, the way that you speak, the way that you're feeling, which can produce negative feelings toward others through judgments and prejudices. But here's what it does for the individual who has this kind of stuck mentality, is that when we lack this mental flexibility, you can, yes, of course, as I said, often we'll feel stuck. So I said stuck already, right? So you have, because your brain is fucking stuck. You are stuck. If you have this, it's black, it's white, it's, it's blue, it's green, it's whatever, the sky is not blue. What color is it? It depends on lighting. So, when you're always in that state that you have to be right, or that you can't see things from another point of view, because often people with mental inflexibility are not going to say, I don't always have to be right. I just can't see it from somebody else's point of view because my opinion or my view on it or whatever. So, but what happens then is because you're feeling stuck, that can lead to this frustration and feelings of anger, and easily adopt this victim mentality, belief that you're not supported, no one likes you, no one ever listens to you, right? Feeling unappreciated sometimes, feeling like you're an island to yourself, and then you feel guilty for not even being able to have this sense of belonging in your own group, whether it's your family or it's your coworkers or some community organization, whatever it is, right? So all these things are going to activate whatever these feelings are that are coming up. They're low energy, negative feelings, and they're going to activate your stress response. So what do you do about that? Well, now so what you do about that now is create a new mindset around that, right? So, okay, so when I come up and I find myself using these words or catch these absolutes, right? When I find myself being triggered, right? Because somebody wants to do it this way, but I see it that way, or no, it has to go over there. It can't go there because of this, that, or the other thing. It's like picking your battles, right? So when you find yourself making an absolute decision about something because from your point of view it has to be that way, and listen, if it's not life and death, right, like you're not in the midst of surgery, then you have an opportunity to create a shift. So that shift is, does it really matter? Like, how much does it matter? Could I be open to seeing this in a different way? So how do we do that? So one of the ways of creating these shifts is always by asking questions, right? So what is the cost of, so one is, what is the cost of me not seeing this another way? What is the cost of me jeopardizing this relationship, right? What is the cost of making a change, not making a change? So by asking yourself those questions, by pausing to ask those questions, how important is this, right? Or how important is it for me to win this, right? So if at the end of the day you can say, I won X number of battles, X number of arguments, chances are you really didn't win. Because nobody is winning, right? So you can't chalk one up for that one. So, but what you can do is ask the questions in the arguments that I had, or where there were disagreements, or where it required some give and take, or seeing things differently, or being open to some new ideas, even though you knew the shortcut was your way, get it done, wrap it up. But in the name of cooperation and collaboration, you needed to see it differently. And so the wins are, where did I have those opportunities and allowed someone else to be heard and considered all of the options and collectively came to a solution, as opposed to chalking one up, I won that. So that would be one way to look at it. And then the other, how did I say that? So, and then the other option, the other way of asking questions around this to gain greater sense of flexibility and to practice this is when you catch yourself even in your thoughts, right? So, because oftentimes, these things can happen, but notice your behavior as well. So how is this triggering you in your stress response, right? So what I mean by that is, so there's fight, flight, freeze. Depending on how you've handled these engagements, when these things trigger you or when these things come up, you're handling it one of three ways: fight, flight, or freeze, right? So you're freezing and you're bottling up, and then you can't speak up. So then you have all these ruminating thoughts, and that is most definitely creating a stress in your body. And then there's the fight, where you're just going to just attack people verbally, usually, right? Through just an argument, yelling, and that's not going to work, and you can't do that, and blah. So, but then the other is flight, right? You just get up and walk away. You walk out. You have no coping skills for how to move it forward, to navigate through it. And so when you're noticing yourself getting triggered, notice what your body's response is. What is your conditioned response to that? Are you going to get up and walk away? Are you going to argue? Or are you going to feel bottled up because you can't speak up? So these are important things to understand about your body, and then how to pattern that, right? So, and again, a lot of this is just conscious decisions on, this is not healthy. because it's not productive, right? So it's not productive in supporting this relationship. It's not productive in getting work done, or whatever those things are. So, so that would be one. And then, so some of the tools that I've already talked about and will talk about going forward. So when you're feeling triggered by that, and you're looking at what is your body's response, what's your pattern of coping with that, what did I say, fight, flight, or freeze, what's that behavior that follows. And so learning now some meditations or some breath work and doing those, conditioning yourself with those, will help reduce that triggered response. But another important piece of that is getting to the root of it. It's always getting to the root of it. Why am I rigid? What are my values that are attached to all of these things? Because it can't just be because it's the law. I have a friend that does that. Because it's the law. Oh, whatever the law. I don't know. I just always see things as like everything is flexible. Rules are made to be broken, It's just the way I see things. And it's true. Because I said so. But you don't have to see it that way. And I'm open enough to see it your way. It just doesn't mean I'm going to adopt the way you see and believe things. But I can be open to that and have compassion for how you see things. So, okay. So what was the other thing that I wanted to share on that? All right. So shift your negative thoughts and beliefs to something positive and empowering. Okay, so in building our mental flexibility, there, of course, you have to repattern your brain, but getting to the root of, so even, I just shared this with someone earlier today. So around how do we trust ourselves? How do we know that even what we believe is true and real, right? Well, it's obviously just based on our cultural conditioning, right? The values we were brought up with, and the way that we've been taught to know what is true and right. So going back and writing down a list of your values, the things that are important to you, whether it's the way you treat people, the way truths are within society, all of those things. What do you value and why do you value? So putting the explanation down, right? So I'll use, religion's an easy one because that was kind of like an awakening that supported me through this. And so just put down maybe a religious belief that you have. So whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or Judaism, whatever it is, right? So why is that the religion that you attach to, and what are those beliefs, right? I'll use the 10 Commandments as an example, right? Like all these things that are kind of rules underneath Christianity, right? So why do you believe that? How is that serving you? What part of your life is living that? And is any of this causing your rigidity? But that was just one example, right? So you could look at all kinds of things, right? So, but making that list, assessing why do I believe this? Does this align with who I am? Or is this just something I've just been carrying around with me because it's what I was brought up with and it's what I know, right? So what you find then is your ability to start looking even at those things and being open to shifting them because they don't really serve your highest good. They're not really aligned with who you are as a person or in the direction and what you want to create in who you want to be, do, or have moving forward in your life. And if you don't, then you need to shift those things, and that can help really expand your mental flexibility and understand where a lot of this stuff comes from. But when you notice these words that are coming up around I must, you should, we have to, those absolutes, everyone. I mean, I'll catch myself every once in a while saying everyone. And I'm like, who the hell is everyone? I mean, it can't be everyone, right? Everything can't be everyone. So when you hear that, think about how you can shift that to include really exactly what it is that you mean, right? Like precisely what you're referencing, because it can't be everyone. It can't be everything all the time, right? So, okay. So that is what I wanted to share with you, wrapping up on mental flexibility and how to be more mentally flexibility and get out of the state of rigid mindset to reduce stress, but also to prevent it when we can be more flexible and see things from a different point of view, giving others opportunities to be heard. And that will give it you practice in giving others an opportunity to be heard, considering all things, and doing little behaviors to allow things you would normally not allow to slide if no one is going to get hurt, right? These practices will help you become more flexible and open to seeing things differently without compromising your values and the things that are important to you. So if you need support around that, because you know that you are too rigid, you may not like that aspect about yourself, you don't know how to shift it, and you need help, there's a link in this post that you can reserve some time with me, and I will help you with either some more resources, some strategies, and if you need deeper help, then we can talk about how I can support you more with that as well. But right now, until the end of the month, I have those calls at 50% off because I want to be able to support as many people as possible through all of this craziness, so that you can be the best version of yourself and really live as your true nature and really optimize your energy right now and keep your body in the best state of health as possible. And reducing your stress is one of the most important ways to do that. So see you next time. Good night.